Hi, Black Cat recapped here. Today I am going to explain a horror movie named Orphan. Kate and her husband John went to the hospital because Kate was about to have a baby. Suddenly, Kate started bleeding and woke up in a room with doctors and nurses, but her husband wasn't there yet. She felt scared and confused when a nurse told her that her baby had died. John arrived and started recording the birth, as if everything was normal. The nurse handed Kate the lifeless baby and she screamed. Suddenly, she woke up in her own bed. She got up and went to the bathroom, where she saw a scar on her belly. She took some medicine. The next day, Kate went to see a therapist named Dr. Browning. The therapist explained that having nightmares like the one she experienced is a common reaction to the trauma of losing a baby before birth. Kate wondered if the nightmare was about that or about her upcoming decision to adopt a child. Kate goes to pick up her daughter Max from school. While driving Max home, Kate gets distracted and almost causes a car accident when she starts moving after a stoplight. Later, Kate is playing the piano and creating music. She gets annoyed by a noise and goes outside to find Max throwing a basketball against the wall. Kate yells at Max to stop, and Max apologizes. John comes home with their son Daniel, and the three of them have fun playing with the basketball. Kate gets into bed with John, and they discuss their decision to adopt a child. They have made up their minds and will go through with it. Some time later, they are shown arriving at an orphanage. Sister Abigail greets them and tells them to explore the facility. Kate stays on the first floor, observing the little girls playing, while John goes to the second floor. He hears a girl singing and goes into the room where Esther is painting. She tells him an amazing story about her painting. Just then, Kate and Abigail enter the room. John introduces them, and the three of them continue talking. They all seem to like her. They talk to Abigail about adopting Esther. Abigail explains that Esther originally came from Russia and the people who brought her to the US passed away in a house fire. But overall, Abigail thinks that Esther is a wonderful girl. 3 weeks later, they pick up Esther from the orphanage and say goodbye to Abigail. In the car, Kate starts teaching Esther sign language. They arrive at their house, and Max is excited to see them. Esther introduces herself to Max right away and asks Kate how much she can hear. Kate tells Esther that she can hear well enough to read people's lips. Once they enter the house, they are greeted by Grandma Barbara and Daniel. Everyone gives Esther welcome gifts, except for Daniel, who already seems jealous of her. Daniel goes outside to the treehouse with his friends, and they look at inappropriate magazines. That night, a storm is approaching as Kate gets ready for bed. Esther wakes up and goes to Max's room. Meanwhile, John and Kate are intimate when there is a knock on the door. It's the two girls asking to sleep in their bed. Esther wants to sleep next to John. The next morning, everyone is getting ready to leave the house for school when Esther comes downstairs wearing a fancy dress. The other children start laughing. Kate wants to check if Esther really wants to wear that dress to school. Esther tells her that it's okay to be different. Kate allows her to wear the dress. Later, in class, Esther is welcomed by her teacher, but one of the kids makes fun of her. On that day, Max and Esther play on a frozen lake. Kate rushes out and yells at them, saying it's not allowed. At the same time, Daniel is playing with a paintball gun and shoots a bird. Esther and Max walk over to Daniel. Esther gives him a big rock and tells him to end the bird's suffering. Daniel doesn't want to do it, so Esther does it for him. Later, Esther goes to take a bath. Kate enters her room to put away laundry and discovers an old Bible hidden in a drawer. Unaware that Esther is watching from the bathroom, Kate looks through the Bible and finds a photo of a man inside. At school, Daniel's friends make fun of him because of Esther, so he pushes her books onto the floor. A girl from her class grabs her Bible, and they struggle over it until it falls on the ground. Esther retrieves it, but the girl tries to take her choker necklace. Esther screams. Later, Kate teaches Esther how to play the piano. She asks Esther about the incident at school, but Esther doesn't want to talk about it. Kate gives her a scrapbook that she has already started for her. Esther then asks about the baby Kate lost. Kate explains what happened and shows her the roses where they scattered the baby's ashes. John takes the girls to a park, and while they are on the swings, one of their neighbors comes over to flirt with John. At the same time, Esther's bully also enters the playground. While playing, the bully wants to go down a slide, but Esther suddenly pushes her, causing her to break her leg. Max witnesses the incident. During dinner that night, John talks to Esther about what happened, and Max confirms that the girls slipped. Later, Kate and John argue about Esther, and their argument gets out of control. Esther hears them from the other room and seems content. One day, Sister Abigail visits their house. She talks to the parents about Esther, expressing her concerns that something might be wrong with her. She mentions past incidents where Esther may have hurt other children. Esther overhears everything and goes to Max, telling her that they need to help each other so that the mean lady doesn't take her away. Kate suggests taking Esther to a therapist, and John agrees. Meanwhile, Esther tells Max to find the keys to the treehouse, but instead, she uses them to unlock John's safe and take out a gun. She removes the bullets from the revolver, leaving one inside. She points the gun at Max, scaring her very much. As Abigail leaves the house in her car, Esther takes Max to a bridge and tells her that they will frighten Abigail so much that she'll never want to come back. As the car approaches, Esther pushes Max onto the street, and Abigail almost hits her but swerves and crashes the car. Abigail finds Max crying, and Esther hits her with a hammer. Esther tells Max to help her move Abigail off the road. They roll her down, but she is still alive, so Esther finishes her off with the hammer. The two of them then go into the treehouse, where Esther hides her bloody clothes and the hammer. Daniel notices them climbing down from the treehouse, but Esther also sees him. That night, she enters his room with a sharp knife, threatening him not to tell anyone. Frightened, Daniel accidentally pees himself. John and Kate take Esther to see Browning, a therapist. The therapist tells John and Kate that there is nothing wrong with Esther, but suggests that Kate is the problem. She believes that Kate feels insecure as a mother and takes it out on Esther. John agrees with the therapist's assessment. When they return home, Kate receives a call from the orphanage, informing her that Sister Abigail has been missing since the previous day. The police are searching for Sister Abigail and eventually discover her body where Esther left it. Feeling concerned about Esther's true identity, Kate decides to contact the orphanage in Russia from where Esther was adopted. She learns that there are no records of Esther prior to her arrival in the United States. That night, Esther enters the kitchen and presents Kate with a bucket of roses that she picked from the place where Kate's deceased daughter's ashes were scattered. This upsets Kate, and she grabs Esther, but John intervenes and takes the blame for the incident. Later that night, Esther goes to the garage and intentionally breaks her own hand. Back in bed, Esther calls for John, complaining about her hurting arm. When he checks it, he realizes that her arm is indeed broken. They return from the doctor's appointment, and John is tucking Esther into their bed when Kate enters the room. John confronts her about grabbing Esther, but Kate denies doing it forcefully. Later, Kate goes to a store and buys 2 bottles of wine. She drinks some of it but pours the remaining wine down the drain. The next morning, Kate drives the kids to school. When Daniel's bag rips, she gets out of the car to help him. Meanwhile, Esther puts the car in drive with Max still inside. Kate chases after the car until it finally stops in the snow. That night, Dr. Browning visits their house. Kate insists that she put the car in park and believes Max is covering for Esther. John shows Kate the second wine bottle, which Esther found. The therapist informs Kate that she reserved a spot for her in a rehabilitation center. John accuses Kate of being manipulative, and gives her a week to go to rehab, or he will leave and take the kids. The following day, Kate makes another call to the orphanage. Frustrated by the lack of information, she decides to retrieve Esther's Bible. She discovers it hidden inside a stuffed toy and finds pictures of men inside. Kate notices the words, Sarn Institute, on the Bible and promptly searches online to learn more about it. She dials the number she discovers and learns that the Sarn Institute is actually a mental hospital, not an orphanage. Meanwhile, Daniel sneaks out of the house to retrieve items from the treehouse. Esther follows him there and starts pouring fuel on the evidence, then ignites it and continues pouring fuel on Daniel. She locks him inside the burning treehouse. Daniel calls out for his mother, but she is preoccupied investigating Esther. Daniel climbs onto the roof, desperately seeking help. He falls onto a wooden beam but loses his grip and falls to the ground, while Esther watches. Suddenly, Kate notices the fire and rushes over to Daniel as Esther moves to kill him with a rock. Max intervenes and pushes Esther away, allowing Kate to arrive in time to prevent further harm. Daniel survives the incident. They all end up in the hospital, and the doctor informs them that Daniel has a serious neck injury and may not remember what occurred. Kate tells John what she discovered about Esther, but he still doesn't believe it. While they argue, Esther goes into Daniel's room. Max knows what's happening and follows her. Esther begins smothering Daniel with his pillow, while Max goes to get their parents. The alarm in Daniel's room goes off and the doctors manage to revive him. Kate confronts Esther and slaps her. Orderlies quickly intervene. In the midst of the chaos, Kate misses an important phone call. John goes downstairs to the living room and starts drinking heavily. Esther comes downstairs dressed up like an adult and sits next to John, who is confused by her behavior. Esther attempts to kiss him, but he pulls away, explaining that he doesn't have the same feelings for her as he does for Kate. John tells Esther to go to her room, but she refuses to be spoken to like a child. Esther goes to her room and cries. Meanwhile, Kate receives a call from a doctor at the Sarn Institute. The doctor recognizes Esther and urgently advises Kate to get her family out of the house and call the police. He reveals that Esther is not a young girl, but actually has a hormone disorder that makes her appear like a child. In reality, she is an adult woman. Esther was a highly violent patient at the hospital. The doctor informs Kate that Esther has killed at least 7 people. Kate rushes home. Back at the house, Esther destroys her room and removes all the makeup she used to disguise her true identity as not being a child. John goes to check on Esther and discovers her paintings all over the wall. Kate is calling him while she's driving home, but the power in the house suddenly goes out before he can answer. Kate calls the police for help. John finds a flashlight and searches through the house. Suddenly, Esther stabs him. Although injured, John is still alive, but Esther continues stabbing him until he dies. Max witnesses this and becomes her next target. Kate rushes to the house and drives so fast that she crashes into it. She quickly goes upstairs and finds John. Then she realizes that Max is in danger and frantically tries to locate her. Suddenly, Esther shoots Kate. Kate manages to hide in her bedroom. Max hides in the garden while Esther relentlessly pursues her. Kate, observing from the glass roof, sees Esther closing in. Esther shoots at Max again but misses. Then, Max manages to escape as Kate breaks the glass roof, falling on top of Esther. Moments later, Max wakes Kate up. Kate takes the gun and picks up Max, leaving Esther behind. They walk out into the forest, seeking safety. The police come and search the house, but Esther is nowhere to be found. Esther starts chasing Kate and Max with a knife. They end up falling onto the frozen lake. In a desperate move, Max grabs the gun and shoots, causing the ice to break. Both Kate and Esther fall into the freezing water and continue to struggle. Kate manages to overpower Esther. As Kate crawls out of the water, Esther grabs hold of her, pleading not to be left to die. However, Kate kicks her back into the lake.